This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 120 of the Dressage Radio Show, brought to you with the generous support of Charles Owen, Horseshow.com, and Equestrian Collections. Hi, I'm Chris Stafford, and joining me to co-host the show this week is JJ Tate. Welcome back to the show, JJ.
Thank you very much, Chris. It feels great to be back.
How have you been since we last saw you? You know, I knew you were going to be travelling up to the Young Horse Championship, so you've been pretty busy, haven't you? You tweet, and I follow you on Facebook, and so I know you've been getting around since we last spoke.
Yes, it's been very busy. We were, I think the last time we talked, we were talking about the North American Young Rider and Junior Championships out there in Kentucky, and since then we made a long trek out to Chicago for the National Young Horse classes, and I was actually in the Developing Horse Championship, so we ended up 7th, which was a little disappointing. We had too many mistakes, but I'm really proud of my horse, Fabergé, and it was such a beautiful weekend. Although while I was away, we had an earthquake and a hurricane come through Maryland. So it was, of all the weeks to be gone, it was a little stressful not to be back in my barn, but my assistant, Ashley Perkins, did a super job battening down the hatches, and we all survived with no problem.
Oh, gosh. No, that's a relief to know, because a lot of people were not so fortunate, were they, with those terrible weather coming through them.
It
extraordinary.
Is unbelievable, this weather. I mean, and it's just crazy. I mean, for people's sake, it was great that New York didn't get that terribly, that they were saying. But then everything north of there, it was just such destructive, people are out of electricity and it's flooding, and it's just, Mother Nature has just been wreaking havoc. It's just really some powerful stuff going on.
It really is. And, we have our friends all around the world listening, and I know that you all have pretty extreme weather in different parts of the world. And you don't expect it to be so bad here in the States. And I'm sure they're looking at us thinking, well, we have hurricanes, we have earthquakes, but, it is unusual for that to happen to us here. To the extent that which it has, and an earthquake in Virginia, my goodness. Well, hope everyone is safe and recovered. And of course, if you do want to support those in need that have suffered from this extreme weather, we do have a website, horseworldgivesback.com, which the Horse Radio Network supports all year round. So please join us in that effort. Well, JJ, we have a big show this week. We're going to be talking to a friend of yours, Teresa Butter, about young horse development. That's, I know, a subject that's dear to your heart, isn't it?
It is. I'm just really passionate about, all horses, but I really love, having, just watching a special horse sort of come through the levels and to be able to be, part of their beginning of their life. I mean, I don't start young horses from the beginning, but I'm many times, the rider that takes them to their first horse shows and brings them up through the Young Horse program. And it's exciting to, then see them turn into beautiful FEI horses. So it's a wonderful program, and I'm really, truly excited about it.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing from Teresa a little bit later on in the show. We're also going to hear from Abby Henderson. Abby is the owner of Elysium Farm up in Harvard, Massachusetts, a breeding farm, because she's just contributed to a new grant fund via the Dressage Foundation to support breeders in the U.S. So a wonderful initiative there. We're going to hear more about that from Abby in just a second. But before we go any further, and also should mention that we also have the U.S. Dressage Federation's monthly segment. That's coming up later on in the show with Catherine Robertson and Lilo Four. But as I said, before we go any further, I do want to bring you news of one of our sponsors here on the Dressage Radio Show, and that is Horseshow.com. At Horseshow.com, you can now compete online just like you were at a regular horse show. You can get judged by the top judges and get the judges' comments. Just upload your home video and enter a class online at Horseshow.com. It's a simple and economic way for you to compete with your horse from home. And it's also a great way to prepare for your next show and to track your progress during the off-season. So go to horseshow.com, where they feature real horse shows for multiple breeds and disciplines that's judged also by nationally accredited judges. All you have to do is go to horseshow.com 24/7 to upload your video and enter with a chance to win at any time at horseshow.com. Well, as I said, the first guest here on the show is Abby Henderson, who's the owner of Elysium Farm, and she has started this wonderful initiative that, and I know you'll be eager to hear about this, JJ, because it does support breeders in the US to try and raise the bar over here and to make us more competitive with European breeders. So let's hear from Abby Henderson. Well, Abby, hi, welcome to the Dressage Radio Show, and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm delighted you could join us because we are talking about young horse development and breeding and how important that all is over here now in the States as we're trying to establish this and catch up with Europe. And the announcement this week of the new grant fund that you're behind this. Tell us about it and what was the catalyst for this idea, Abby?
Well, it's actually something that I've been thinking about for a couple years. I got an opportunity to spend some time with some horses that were bred in this country and talk a little bit to their breeders, and I just began to appreciate some of the challenges that U.S. breeders face, and they have, for the most part, such a commitment to, improving the quality, and they're often trying to do that with limited resources.
Well, they're certainly doing that. You're the owner, as I said in the introduction, of Elysium Farm, so this is something that, obviously, your livelihood as well. Tell us a little bit about your operation and how, this all fits in what you're trying to achieve at the farm as well.
Well, we're a 23-stall boarding facility, as you said, in Harvard, and, we really have a commitment to, quality horse care and quality training, and we just felt that, quality U.S. breeding fit in really nicely with our mission, and it was something that, we had the opportunity to do, and we thought it was a nice fit.
Well, it certainly is that. Now, do you want to explain exactly how it works, how people can qualify for this, and what the value of it is?
It's open to any U.S. breeder, big or small, and it's for any educational opportunity, either in this country or even abroad. And, we're just looking to help people increase their ability to attend, educational events to improve their own breeding program.
Well, certainly that we will obviously put a link to the Dressage Foundation, of course, and has announced this, and you can apply through the Dressage Foundation, I'm assuming, Abby.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct.
Terrific. And there will be funds available in future years. Is that the idea as the balance increases over time, as donations increase the fund balance?
Yeah, I believe the first donations will likely be available in 2012, and then we'll, hopefully have an opportunity to increase that further.
Well, terrific. So what would be your long-term goal for this, Abby?
My long-term goal is certainly to help U.S. breeders catch up with Europe. I'd love to see, I'd love to see U.S. bred horses being internationally competitive, and the availability of really quality horses, even for adult amateurs, to be much more extensive in this country, and just generally improve the quality of horses here.
Well, obviously a terrific objective, and as I said earlier, it's something we want to do is to catch up with Europe, isn't it? And there's more and more very good, American-bred horses over here, warm-bloods over here, as the sport grows too.
Absolutely, I think it's a very realistic, goal over time to catch up. So we'd love to be a part of that happening.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you very much. We will put a link, of course, to the Dressage Foundation's website for the Elysium Farm Fund for U.S. Breeder Excellence. So, well, Abby, good luck with that, and thank you very much for spending time and telling us more about it today.
Oh, well, thanks again for having me.
Well, JJ, that's extremely helpful and I'm sure warmly welcome to have that kind of support for breeders because, without that kind of support, it's going to take a long time to bring us up to par with the European counterparts, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that's just terrific, that we want to be able to raise and breed our own horses here and so that we can be competitive on the world market. I think it's improving, and I think, every year we see better and better horses, and it's just terrific that, there's going to be funding available and sponsorships to really, the real grassroots of it all are really the breeders. And, without wonderful products, we as trainers, we're only as good as the horses we sit on. So I think that's terrific. That's great. Great news.
It is very exciting. And thanks again to Abby for joining us. I'll put a link on our show notes to Abby's website too at elysiumdressage.com and also to the Dressage Foundation where, as Abby says, you can find out more about that grant. Well, we're going to hear from Teresa Butter in a moment to be talking more about young horses, but before we do, I want to remind you about our sponsors, Charles Owen, because Charles Owen, while they're most widely known for their helmets, they also produce gloves, and they have two popular gloves, the Ruckle Chester and the Ruckle New Ascot gloves, which are stylish synthetic leather gloves that come with rain reinforcements and an elasticated wristband, plus a hook and loop fastening tab for adjustability. The back of the glove is breathable, which prevents the buildup of sweat. It's practical and hard-wearing, making it ideal for everyday use. You can find out more about these gloves and, of course, all the helmets in the Charles Owen range by visiting their website at charlesowen.co.uk. And we are obviously thrilled to have Charles Owen as sponsors of the Dressage Radio. So, well, coming now to our next guest, JJ, who's a good friend of yours. So why don't you introduce her to the show?
Teresa Butte has been a really great friend of mine for a number of years. She's on the East Coast, definitely one of the top young horse riders and trainers. We've both been 5-year attendees of Scott Hassler's Young Dressage Horse Trainer Symposium, which is an invite-only, no press allowed, terrific symposium where we, Harmony Sport Horses are generous sponsors of this event, and we bring over many times Europeans to help us sort of upgrade our national trainers of the young horses. And Teresa and I have been very good friends and have just really become very good friends through the program of the young horses. We both have been competing against each other, and we just, really felt like we have so much in common and are both passionate about it. And I'm excited to, talk with her about all of this.
Well, JJ, we've got a friend of yours joining us now, Teresa Butt from Glen Burnie, Maryland. You're going to be talking about young horses after, obviously, the Young Horse Championship just took place. So I think there's quite a few things that you want to cover in this. I think it's interesting that we should address this because we've had actually interest from our listeners around the world to cover this very subject. So welcome to the show, Teresa.
Hello. How are you?
Well, good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I know you and JJ are good friends, and so you're probably on the same page here with this subject. I mean, there's a lot of issues around, as I said, young horses and preparing young horses for the championship. So, JJ, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Well, Teresa and I have been friends for a long time, and we've both trained with Scott Hassler, our national young horse coach, for, Teresa, how long have you trained with Scott? Many years, I think.
I started riding with Scott the year the first Young Horse Trainer Symposium was held when he was at Hilltop, and I believe that was 2005.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we've both have been 5-year attendees of the Young Horse Trainer Symposium that Scott holds every year. And we've both actually ridden horses at Fairden, the World Championships for dressage horses as well. And we're both trainers in Maryland. And I just, thought it'd be really fun to have a discussion, back and forth about, how to prepare horses for young horse classes, what horses are the right types of horses. And first I want to say this year's Young Horse Championships, I just got home from Chicago last week, and it was incredible. The level of quality of horses and riders. It's really exciting where the sport is coming. I mean, don't you think, Teresa, that every year you see something changing?
Absolutely. From the first time I started participating in it, and every year, I had young horses coming up, and I had went to, consecutive ones, and even every year the horses were getting better and better and better. And I think last year, and especially this year, I mean, Emily's horse is a super horse, and it's just the quality is getting so much better. We're breeding better horses here, and that's exciting. And the horses that come from Europe, are really on point, but we're getting better horses in America too. So the quality is getting much better.
Yeah, I think it's exciting too about the quality of trainers and the quality of riding. I think just everyone's on such a great camaraderie level, and everyone. It felt finally this year a lot more like it felt in Fairden, where everybody was really excited about their talented young prospects, and I would say probably the top 5 or 6 places in each class were all over 8, which a few years ago was just not. That just maybe the winner was over 8. So it's been exciting to see where that's going, and the marks going up, and the people returning. Sometimes horses change riders, but it's kind of fun to sort of follow your favorite horse. Like Silva Martin's Estate, where it was like we all loved him when he was 4, and he was national champion, and it's just exciting to see, what the horse is turning into, and it's just a real great time in the sport. So I just want to explain for all our listeners out there, what the young horse classes are, and that it's a little bit different from our regular national tests, where for the young horse classes that we have a 4, 5, and 6-year-old division. And at the national championships, the top 15 from all the other qualifying shows around the country get qualified to come. And a horse is judged on only 5 categories. So he gets a score for his walk, trot, and canter, submission, and overall impression. And Teresa, let's just talk a little bit about what your feeling is on that versus a regular dressage test.
Well, for me, the exciting part about the young horse classes is, if you have a horse that's super talented but can be a little fresh and, a little bit full of fire and gives you a little bit, in the middle of the class, they don't necessarily, hurt you for that. Like if you were in a regular class and, you get a 0 because your horse, didn't do something, they look more at the overall thing, and they kind of will let the horse make little mistakes because they want the quality horses for the future. For me, I had a 5-year-old mare that she was a standard hit, and I would have loved to have done the young horse classes with her, but unfortunately, she just wasn't strong enough to show the gates as big as she could and just look like it, that international quality. So I took the route of the national level classes with her, and she did great and won with 70 and 75%. But in the young horse classes, not because she was exuberant that she would have gotten in trouble, but she didn't have the strength to keep the quality of what they were looking for. And she ended up developing fine into a young, promising FEI horse, pre St. George. So for me, that's what's exciting about the young horse classes, that the what they're looking for is different, and then you have the option of what's best for the horse, and that's what I love about it. I don't know how you feel about that, but they can have that exuberance, and it's okay, and you can take a little bit more risk and show what the horse has.
Yeah, I think I love the young horse classes, and I think I also want to mention, too, that we also are able to pick up a score sheet at the end. But what's really fun and exciting usually fun and exciting about the young horse classes is the judge has a microphone. So everybody and their brother that are standing around the arena get to hear exactly why the judges, and there's normally 2, sometimes 3 judges in the booth at the same time together judging. So that's also what's fun about it, that it really becomes not just, this judge, loves my riding, or this judge doesn't love my riding. There's 2 in there, and they get to discuss what they love about it, what they didn't love about it, and come to a consensus, and then they share that with all the spectators and the other riders. It's really such a fun way to really get educated and also, what to look for.
And to add to that, I think, dressage is a sport. Everybody wants to see the Grand Prix, and I love to see the Grand Prix too, but to make the young horse stuff, that's exciting for people to come and see, and that can help promote the sport in this country for, to people to listen and understand what's going on with the horses and the training a little bit. And that's what I like about the young horse classes too. When they get on the microphone, the people in the stands are, it's a little bit exciting, to hear. And as a rider, you're like, woo, it's a little bit whoa, but I like that part of it, to try to get people more involved in the sport and make it a little bit exciting,
And I do think it also increases the camaraderie also between the riders and the judges. So many times, it just has a different energy to it when you can stand at sea and be face-to-face, eye to eye with the judges and have them. I mean, sometimes you can get some really great advice on, and not that they should be giving you a riding lesson, but sometimes just they say something in a way that you just can't capture in words on a test. So I think that's also a lot of fun. And I think, Teresa,
sorry.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, speaking of the judging, it's been interesting over, the past 5-6 years to see how the judging has developed. You know what I mean? I think we've gotten better with the judges doing the comments, and that part of it has gotten better. And just like you said, that you can look them in the face and they can, it's just really developed and getting better every time, I think.
Yeah, and I think the energy is changing where it's like everyone sees a talented horse and everybody gets excited about it. The other trainers that are there, and I think the judges, and it's just kind of like everyone's sort of excited, they're really rooting for the horse to be successful. Like you want to have that horse get big points. And it was really fun. I think for one of the first times in America, people were clapping, when someone would get like an 8.8, like the crowd was getting excited. Like within the comments, people would start clapping and they were so excited about it. And that just, dressage is sort of, a boring sport, where it's like no one's allowed to clap and get excited. And it's like, it's totally thrilling and it is exciting and it's fun. But, people I agree with you that they're starting to get really into, picking a favorite horse because they're just moving so beautifully that, and I do think, as riders, and you would know this too, that it's like, it's just as difficult. Yes, the Grand Prix has more elements to it and there's a lot more movements in it, but to get a 4, 5, or 6-year-old in a relative balance point to be able to do the things in this test, a 5-year-old has to counter canter, 6-year-olds have to make 4 clean flying turns in the final test. I mean, to get a young horse who's still maybe growing, struggling a little bit with their balance, distracted by the atmosphere, to get a young horse to be, for them at that moment of their life and in their training, to be able to be that balanced and that responsive, that can be just as big of a challenge to get a Grand Prix horse, sometimes a bigger challenge to get, than a Grand Prix horse to get in that balance, to be able to do a fantastic Grand Prix. I think it's also a special skill and an awesome challenge to take a young horse into the class and really show at this point in its life it has really top training. I think that's really something special as well.
Yes. And I agree. Your Grand Prix horse isn't going to be butt high in 6 months, I mean, to make the horses right and peak, to qualify and then, maybe continue with the training and, as they grow, maybe back off, maybe teach them something new and get them physically strong enough that they're ready for the nationals. It's a tricky business and balancing what's right for the horse and sometimes what your owner wants and sometimes what your heart wants because that horse is so special and you want to do the best that you can for that horse. And it can be a tricky game that, to do what's best for the horse and, it's a tough time in their life, that their body's changing so much and their mind's developing and they're traveling, and I think it can be very difficult. I agree, but I think it's also, it's such a wonderful time to get that basis of body strength and throughness of the body is starting to begin, and it's such a wonderful time for the horses to be ridden correctly. And for the trainers like ourselves and many of our friends, it's just such a, I don't know what the right word to say is, how important it is for us to ride the horses correctly and give them the chance to show themselves. I don't know how to say that better, but to let them shine without us interfering is you know what I mean? To set them up that they can I just don't know how to say it right.
And I agree with you. I mean, I definitely think, we're talking about creating the correct foundation, and that, that's how many times have we gotten horses in training that we've had to redo things, or, like you said earlier, like they've been confused or they've been, because they're exuberant, been a little mistreated, or, they're like such a clean slate when they first are young. And I'm sure you would agree with me on this too, Teresa, that it's like we would rather take, a baby green, barely broke 3-year-old over a 5.5-year-old that's had not a great start, because to teach them something for the first time is, of course, training is not so easy, but it makes it much easier when you don't have to go and try and erase something, or, that the first thing the horse learns is the right thing. I think that's huge, and that you can really lay the foundation, whether the horse stays with you the rest of its life or it goes on to have it becomes an amateur horse, or, goes on a sponsor buys it for a different horse. In Europe, it's amazing that these young horse riders are as famous as the Olympic riders. And, they just have such as much respect, and, that everyone appreciates that, oh yeah, you rode that horse at the World Championships, or young horse, the Bundes Championat. I mean, it's all just so exciting. And
yes. And one thing I'd like to add. One thing I'd like to add is some of the horses, that have done the young horse classes in Europe, because I've had people approach me and say, well, they just do the young horse classes and then you never see these horses again. But there are several horses that have done the World Championships that have become great Grand Prix horses. You personally have had one in your barn. And, my horse that I took to the World Championships, God willing, I'm going to show him Grand Prix soon. And it's not ruining young horses. The most important thing is to do what's right for the horse. If it's too much for the horse, then go the national way. If the horse can
or
do
don't
it,
show it all.
And it's or don't exactly. Yeah. The young horse classes are super valuable if they're used in the right way, which I think Scott absolutely, that's in his heart, and that's the way he wants to go, and we should all follow that. Used in the right way, this can become a basis for the United States to have a really good team for the future of Grand Prix horses and a team of great riders. I mean, we have wonderful riders in this country, Stefan and Debbie, and, we have wonderful, but we need more wonderful people. JJ Tate and Teresa Buda would be great. But, this is going to be such a great basis for a pool of horses for the United States to start having great Grand Prix horses for the Olympics in the future. I feel that's my hope.
Exciting. I agree 100%. And I think, Gladstone, we're leaving tomorrow morning for Gladstone, and there's almost half of the class of the Pan Am hopefuls have been young horse candidates. I mean, David Blake and Lord Albert were also with me when I was in Sheridan in 2007 in the 5-year-old division. We all know Stefan Peters' horse, and he's competing, was successful at Aachen, and now one of the top couple of spots for, for the Pan Am Games. No, that's the clock I have. But it's just exciting to, to see these horses that you're absolutely right. The young horse classes absolutely does not ruin young horses. And my 19-year-old sound, Grand Prix horse was ridden when he was 5 and 6 in the World Championships for Sweden. His name's Cam Bay. He's a full brother to I'm totally having a mind blank right now, Admiral. So, all these, Totalus was there as a 5-year-old as well. And of course he didn't move the same way, but there's many, many really successful top-level horses that have gone, and are still successful in the top levels.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation in just a second, but first of all, I want to remind you about one of our valued sponsors here on the Dressage Radio Show, and that, of course, is Equestrian Collections. If you're shopping for a young rider, then Equestrian Collections gives you the best choice of riding apparel. Also, footwear, gifts, helmets, and safety gear for young riders of any equestrian website in the world. And there's also great everyday prices and promotional prices too, with an enormous selection from head to toe. Equestrian Collections have young riders covered. You can shop the young riders department at equestriancollections.com or in the horse department. And remember, you can use the coupon code HRN at the checkout and get $10 off your next order, or $100 or more. Equestrian Collections is a participating retailer of the Horse World Gives Back campaign.
So what do you think? What do you look for when you're looking? I mean, I think it's important to also talk about, not all 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and just because your horse is sick, need to go and do these classes. So what do you look for when you're looking for a horse to go to this group of elite athletes for that age group?
Well, when I'm looking for a horse, I really prefer 3 very good, clean, quality gaits. If I go look at a horse and it has this huge trot and it's just like, oh my gosh, but then the walk is lateral and tight and, maybe because it's been, accidentally taught to do that. I just like 3 very good, clean, quality gaits, because with the correct training, the way dressage is meant to be, the horse will become a Super Grand Prix horse, we all hope, or at least a good FEI horse, unless you have an injury or something. But with the correct training to develop and let that horse show his natural ability, that's what I look for, in honesty.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think, I have 2 8-year-olds in my barn right now. One is his name is Rosal. He's a beautiful Oldenburg stallion, and he's a little bit more of a wow. He's just a beautiful animal, and sometimes not so focused just because he's a stallion. And then I have a very nice, kind of normal Westphalian named Fabergé, who it turns out he turned into a wonderful, wonderful horse. And we were just 7th at the Developing Horse Championships, and he was reserve champion as a 6-year-old. And he was one of those horses that didn't have fancy gaits, had really good gaits, very clear, terrific walk. And what they loved about him was his overall impression. That really scored huge points because he was supple, he was listening, he was balanced. And so sometimes it's interesting. And I had gotten there at the horse show, on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm looking at these horses trotting around, and they were amazing. And I'm kind of getting a little insecure, oh my God, Fiji is not trotting like that. Oh my God, that thing is going to the Olympics. And it was amazing that horse probably ended up, 6th or something. It was not in the top. And here, Fiji was, because he was so rideable and his mind is so trainable, he was able to really show himself well. So it's fun that each horse has a little bit different, something special to bring. And even though it may not have the most extraordinary gaits, if it's very rideable and very trainable and you can present a beautiful test, they will also reward that. And so that's also great, that it doesn't have to only be, super, super fancy and, moving like a world beater. Of course, we love the world beater as well, but it's fun to have a horse that can just be really trainable as well. And I do think, when we think about, we just always have to listen to the horse. That the horse is our calendar. And I've got a wonderful 5-year-old that my fiance Richard Nongren rides a little bit, and I had ridden it a few times, and we kind of attempted, we were thinking, maybe we should do the young horse classes with him. He has fabulous gaits, like nothing under an 8, and he's just not strong enough. It's just what we were talking about before. He's growing, he's just in the middle of an awkward stage. He's only a year and a half under saddle, and it was like, it's just so exciting to think this horse is so special, and we love him, and he's so trainable and rideable, but he just doesn't have enough balance to do a canter walk out of a counter canter. And so, we didn't want to push him. He's going to be a wonderful horse, probably a wonderful Grand Prix horse, hopefully one day. And it's just not worth, to add that angst, for our goals or what we think he should do. And I just think that's always, I don't think you could ever go wrong in training horses if you constantly listen to the horse and what he wants to do. And I wrote something on my Facebook page the other day about, letting the horse be who they are and not making them into who you think they should be. And I could not believe the response on this. I mean, people just went crazy about it. And, we were kind of joking because it's like whether that's my chestnut, wild horse wants his mane on the left side and I've been combing it to the right all this time, let him be who he is. And if he doesn't want to do the young horse classes, then he doesn't have to do the young horse classes. He still may be, not every horse has to take the exact same road. And just because he doesn't do the young horse classes doesn't mean it's not a quality animal. But I do think it's fun to do. I think it's a great program. I think Scott Hassler's doing just a super job organizing the whole thing and being a great coach at the horse shows. And I mean, you and I, we're lucky enough to train with him, privately and on a regular basis. And I just think it's a really great program to be a part of.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And like you said, the horses being the calendar, I think it's good for people to set short-term goals. Of course, we all want to reach for the stars and go to the world championships, and but be realistic and listen to your horse, set short-term goals, and, with your 5-year-old, like you said, get him used to going to shows, and then who knows, over the winter he might just explode, and next year you come out and do the 6-year-olds, and that's totally possible. With Johnny, who I showed in the 5-year-olds and the 6-year-olds, my Horse United, I did not do the 4-year-olds with him when he was 4, because he just wasn't ready. The first horse show I took him to as a 4-year-old, he wouldn't go up center line, and I got a 50. He was just so scared of everything. So as a 4-year-old, I didn't want to put the pressure on him of doing, equivalent of first level with lengthenings and, just, making him try to balance so much and then adding on top of that pressure. And when he's like, oh my gosh, So as a 4-year-old, I didn't do young horse classes with him. And then as a 5 and a 6-year-old, he did very well for me. So I was glad that I did.
And I would say the similar experience with Donner Moose, the horse that I went in 2007 in the 6-year-old divisions, and he and Johnny were always in the same classes together. And I did do the 4-year-olds with him at Devon. I came out when he was a 4-year-old, and that was a great experience. I mean, for him, he was a really big, powerful mover, so to just fly around in the 4-year-old test, he loved that. But then his 5-year-old year was definitely more of a challenge, and I felt like I was dealing with a lot of growth. And I mean, for him to start to learn to package his canter, to be able to do counter canter into the walk, it was just like I would be looking down alongside like, oh my God, I have to walk at the end of this, and we're just like careening downhill. And then as a 6-year-old, he just found himself and pulled himself together, and I could not believe the quality of movement in that horse. And we were able to, get qualified for the World Championships and represent our country and be the top placing American pair there. And that was just such a gift. And as a 5-year-old, I would have never even dreamed that was in our future. I just would have never even thought it. And it was just, for me, sort of something fun and different to do. And I kind of liked the program. And I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. And, that's where we sort of really became friends. And it was just such a wonderful experience. And then, and then from there, you just decide which horses, I think, the 4-year-old class is really nice, and they're not, I always get a chuckle when they're like, the horse is 2 on the forehand, as a 4-year-old, and I'm kind of like, but aren't they all kind of on the forehand because they're 4, It's like kind of funny, just the different standards of how a horse should balance itself for what age. But, I think when you see it done well and you get a really good rider that in a nice, sympathetic way can bring the best out of your horse for them at that moment of their life, I think that's really important and money well spent. I mean, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, if you want to take it home and ride them around and have a good time like that, they'll have a great basics by that time. But, I think it's difficult, and I think sometimes you do your horse a disservice when you, ride it around, we were talking about this earlier, ride it around for 6 months when they first get started and you don't canter them, or you wait till they're 4.5 to get them under saddle. And, there's some real big moments in their life that they sort of need this, they need this part of the riding and the learning and the growing, and, that their minds become trainable and their bodies become trainable. And, I think it's important to be able to start them early, give them time off after they're under saddle a little bit if they need it to not them growing. Just share a little bit what you think about that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think people sometimes have a misconception about young horses. And what I mean by that is think of it in terms of a gymnast, okay? I can't imagine at 36 years old now doing a split or flipping through the air. But when I was 3 or 4 years old and I started tumbling and started stretching, and maybe by 7 I would have been like, woo, flipping around, right? Well, it's the same thing with young horses. You don't want to wait until they're, the equivalent of my age before you start teaching them how to bend or be flexible, or to show them the range of their movement. When they're young, that is the best. Think of it like that is what I believe in my heart, or like a ballet dancer. I couldn't start ballet dancing now. Well, I think if people think about it in terms like that, it might be easier for them to understand, because I think people who sometimes maybe don't have the education like we do, where we've been able to work with some of the best masters in our generation right now, it's just people, it's okay if a 5-year-old who's trained correctly one day gets a little bit spooked, and instead of running away, it starts to pee off a few steps. That is not abuse. That is letting the horse play and express himself, and play with that and develop it, and don't wait till he's 11 or 12 years old and start beating him with the whip to make him pee off. Let him when he's 5 and he's,
And don't shut down the exuberance. I think that's important.
Yes.
Well, great. This has been totally awesome talking with you about this passionate subject that we both love. But we've got to wrap it up soon. So I just wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me about this.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really have enjoyed it.
Well, it's been great to have you, Teresa. Thank you so much. We will, of course, put a link on your on our show notes to your website, teresabertadressage.com. And want to thank you for spending the time. Good luck with your young horses, and come back and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys take care.
Well, that was great to hear. That was a conversation that could have gone on for a lot longer, JJ. We're all passionate about talking about our kids, aren't we? And it's like listening to you talking about raising your children, isn't it? When we talk about the young horses and developing these horses in a correct way.
It's funny you say that, because my sister is a teacher, and she always talks about her different kids in her class, and I'm like, that's what I do all day long. I just have like 15 privately tutored kids that I'm dealing with every day, and some get bored easy, and some talk back, and some are the perfect student and always have their homework done on time. And, it's just so easy they're all so different, and it's, they all develop a little differently. They all learn a little bit differently. And it's just so fun to just hear that there's really no one way to have a horse become successful. And, through a couple of our different stories, some are good, at the 4-year-old and then skip a year and then they come back as a star as a 6-year-old. And some are never good in the young horse classes and just, for whatever reason, they just can't get themselves balanced. They can't concentrate at the horse show. They just need to go on a lot of field trips and get used to the, excitement of the showgrounds. And they come out when they're pre-St. George. I mean, they're all just so different. So it's definitely has a feeling of having our children. And we're just so also just invested into their future. I mean, it's just like the basis of all what they'll learn for the rest of their lives. And so we definitely take that seriously and are very passionate about it.
I know. So I think we're going to have more segments like that, maybe, continue that, because I know we do have listeners, as I said, around the world that love to hear about young horse development. What makes a good prospect for the young horse classes and things like that. So I think we should be discussing this more on the show in future episodes, JJ.
Well, Therese and I will certainly not run out of things to talk about.
All right, and we also want to hear from any of our listeners too. If there's anyone that you would like to hear from to talk about the subject of young horses, or indeed anything on the show, then all you have to do is drop me an email to chris@horseradionetwork.com. And of course, if you'd like JJ to invite anyone onto the show while she's co-hosting with me to talk about any of these topics or training issues, we'd love to hear from you. And JJ, you may have some ideas yourself too, who you could bring on the show to discuss these things.
Yeah, I definitely have a couple of great ideas, and we'll have to bring those out in the fall. It'll be a lot of fun.
Okay, well, a lot more shows to come, of course. We're heading into the fall season, and winter is upon us as it gets dark. I mean, the evenings are creeping up on us, JJ. It already feels like we should be changing the clocks, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. And today, I mean, it rained and rained and rained, cats and dogs all day long. So it was just kind of dark all day long anyway.
Yeah, certainly at that time of year, we start thinking about comfort food,
Exactly. You want to be warm. All of a sudden, I mean, in Maryland, it's been so hot this summer. And all of a sudden now, instead of the iced coffee, it's definitely the hot coffee in the morning.
Coffee. There you go.
Because thank God the heat finally broke, but it doesn't need to go from 95 degrees to like 60. A nice 70 degrees in there would be nice.
That's exactly what it did in Kentucky. All right. Well, we've got just a few more things before we wrap up this week. And our next segment is with the U.S. Dressage Federation, their monthly segment here where they bring us news and what's on their mind, what's happening over in their world. So, and to introduce that this week is Catherine Robertson from the USDF.
Thank you, Chris. We're getting ready to kick off our Farm Vet USDF Adult Clinic series with Lilo Four as our featured clinician. And we're talking with Lilo today. And Lilo, you were recently involved in USDF's video production of On the Levels. As people watch the program, they'll see Gary Rockwell addressing rides from a judge's point of view, and you address the same rides, giving suggestions on how to improve specific movements as well as the overall performance of each desk. What advice do you have as a judge and an instructor for riders, their trainers, and instructors about how to select the appropriate competition level based on where they're at with their training program?
I think what riders need to understand is that when they want to go to the competitions, they have to be able to be proficient also at home. So if they are able to ride a test at home and feel secure about it, and they have a feeling for what they're doing, say that they are maybe 70 to 75% proficient in that particular ride, then they can expect somewhat also to be successful in the show arena.
That's great advice. Talk a little bit, or what advice do you have as far as how that relates to their scores?
I think riders must be a little bit honest to themselves and kind of let the scores tell them, of course, what is still missing or where are their strong points and where are the weak points. When they get a test back, they shouldn't put it in the trash can, even though the score may be low, or say when it's a higher score, etc. So I think they should be free and willing enough to kind of read the test, learn from the comments which the judges have given, take that test, go to their trainers and say, look, I need to improve in these sections. Can you help me, and can we achieve it before the next show? And then go on from there.
Well, that sounds like great advice. We're getting ready to, like I said, to start the Adult Clinic Series, and our first clinics are going to be in New York and Nebraska. What are you hoping to accomplish throughout the clinic series?
Well, hopefully that every rider goes home with something learned. And, I haven't, of course, seen the riders. I don't know I don't know the expertise level. But my goal is, of course, is to make these riders go home with something they have not known before, and making them be able to maybe take some nice tricks of the trades home so they can help themselves at home with their riding and their horses. Making sure to give them simple exercises they can take home and improve their training and their expertises with their horses. So I try very hard to make it simple so that people understand it, try not to be too complicated, and so that, amateur riders who are not, maybe even having help every day, and maybe they only have one lesson a week and sometimes even only one lesson a month, that they have some exercises they can fall back onto to help them in their training of horses.
Well, we're excited to have you on board for the clinic series and looking forward to it. I know we're getting a huge response, and if you want some information on the Farm Vet USDF Adult Clinic Series or the On the Levels DVD, you can visit our website at www.usdf.org. And if you want information on Lilo or to see her teaching style, you can visit eTrack, USDF's online learning center, at www.usdf.org/eTrack. That's ETRAK. Or you can go to the homepage and click on the eTrack banner. Thanks again, Lilo, for spending some time with us. And back to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. And USDF will be back with another segment each month here on the Dressage Radio. So our thanks to Catherine Robertson and to Lilo Four. Well, JJ, before I let you go this week, obviously all roads leading to Gladstone this weekend. As we speak, they are obviously descending on Gladstone, New Jersey, for the selection trials for the 2011 Pan American Games for the U.S., of course. And, a lot of other prestigious classes as well. I know you're going to be heading there as soon as we get off the phone. And so I wanted to just go over that a little bit because we all have friends that are obviously making a run for the team there. There's quite a list of Grand Prix horses and, of course, the small tour horses for the Pan Am Games. So any predictions there, JJ? Do you have a crystal ball?
Well, you never know when it comes to horse shows.
That's your prediction.
That is my prediction. You can shake it up any way you see it. But, I do think Heather Blitz, that horse, Paragon, is amazing. I think Stephen Peters will produce wonderful tests. And, speaking about our young horse program, with Shannon, Stephen's horse, came through the young horse program, so I'm really excited about that. And also Pico de Cerro with Lisa Wilcox, Lord Albert with David Blake. Those are all horses that have come up through the young horse championships, and it's just exciting to see. Grandioso also is a top horse that has come through the young horse classes. As we kind of talked our first segment about, the horses in the young horse classes, and now half of the horses trying out for the Pan Am team are graduates of the program. So I'm really I'm excited to see how it all shakes down and who ends up, on the team this year. It's just a really exciting, I think, top level of horses trying out for the Pan Am team this year. It's really exciting.
Well, in due deference to the Grand Prix Tour, and since it is the small tour that's limelighting this year with the Pan American Games. Let's just give the complete list of those combinations that will be vying for the Intermediate 1 Championship and, of course, a place on that Pan American team. And as you mentioned, Stefan Peters tops that. Of course, he's right at the top of the leaderboard right now in the rankings with Valtino's Magic. Second is Heather Blitz with Paragon. Then Cesar Parra with Grandioso. You mentioned Shauna Harding with Rigo. Marisa Festerling with Big Time. Jan Ebeling with Rosensalber 8. Tammy Batts with Ranco. Lisa Wilcox with Pico del Cerro. Pico del Cerro, how do you pronounce that?
Yep, Pico del Cerro.
Pico del Cerro. Sorry, Lisa. David Blake with Lord Albert, Heather Mason with Warsteiner, Tom Noon with Fred Astaire, Jan Ebeling again with Sandrina, Endel Otz, who's been a guest on the show here, young Endel with Toscano, Claire Darnell with Calamar, Chris Hickey with Witness at Hilltop, and Caroline Adams with Ventus Prince. So good luck to all of them. Of course, also the Brentina Cup takes place at Gladstone during the championships there. They are the Collecting Gates Farm Championships. We should give them their full title, the Collecting Gates Farm USEF Dressage Festival of Champions, to be correct. So good luck to all of them, and also the Grand Prix horses there that are outperforming. It's going to be a very exciting weekend. Can you do you have any magic dust you could whisk me up to Gladstone for the weekend, and then my dogs wouldn't notice? You know, the dogs wouldn't notice I'm gone for a couple of days.
Exactly. Well, I think it's going to be a little wet up at Gladstone this year, but it's going to be just a terrific competition, and it's pretty fun to see these horses in combinations where Pico de Cerro is our developing horse champion from this year. Shauna Hardin and Rigo were the developing horse champions last year. It's just, Lord Albert with David has gone to the World Championships in Ferryden. Grandioso was a 6-year-old champion, national champion. So it's a young horse graduate program. So it's really fun also, for the United States to see that their programs are working, and horses are sort of being funneled through the system, and now, they're here trying out for an official team. So I think it'll just be really exciting what all happens by the end of the weekend.
Absolutely, and to make the U.S. proud with all those young horse graduates. Well, good luck to all of them, and of course that team that heads down to Mexico in October for the Pan American Games, and I'm sure hopes will be high that we bring back bring back the gold medal there, of course. But we'll be bringing you news from Gladstone as it happens next week on the show. Well, actually, I correct myself, JJ. Back up a bit. It will be 2 weeks before we could do that, because next week's show has had to be pre-recorded, and that will air next week. So the Gladstone results and the story from Gladstone and the announcement of the team, and we'll be talking to some people involved on the following week's show here on the Dressage Radio Show. But anyway, I'm sure it'll be fun for everybody up there. I hope you stay dry up there, because it can be everything, can't it, at Gladstone? You just can have everything there.
It is. It just depends on the year. I mean, sometimes it's hot, and other times, I think it was 2 years ago that half the thing got canceled because it was just too wet. It was just too wet. So I hope halfway through this week it's looking like it's going to be fairly wet, but hopefully by the end of the weekend, by Saturday, Sunday, we'll dry out a little bit.
Well, the good news is, of course, is the all-weather footing in the arena that they've put down since the last championships there.
Gladstone is truly a magical place. I just can't imagine the Festival of Champions ever being anywhere else. It's just such a wonderful, beautiful facility, and just has a magical feeling to it. So we're always excited to be there.
Well, have a great weekend, and I want to thank you for joining me this week, JJ, to keep me company as co-host, and for bringing your friend Teresa Butter. I thank her as well for being a guest, as well as indeed Abby Henderson, and of course the USDF segment as well here with their guest Catherine Robertson introducing Lilo for. Well, that about wraps up our show for this week. Apart from Gladstone, what else have you got on your calendar for the next few weeks, JJ?
I've got a couple of clinics I'm teaching, and we'll be slowly gearing up for the regional championships. So after Gladstone, things will quiet down a little bit, and we'll just have our regional championships, and then we start slowly packing for Florida.
Already, as it starts to rain and get cold, she's thinking of Florida.
Exactly.
Right.
My girls in the barn have a countdown. So once it gets a little colder and a little rainy, there's a countdown.
All right. Well, long before then, I hope you'll come back on the show and join me again as co-host. Great to have you, JJ. Thank
you so much for having me. As always, it's my pleasure.
Well, again, that wraps it up for this week. You know where the show notes are on our website at dressageradio.com. And don't forget, if you're under 20 years of age, I'm still looking for young reporters to report on your show wherever you are in the world. Just send me an email to chris@horseradionetwork.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. And don't forget to come back here same time, same place next week where I will be waiting. So until then, thank you all for listening.